So have you heard this? Landlords in California can't keep tenants from having dogs in their apartments anymore, and they can't charge extra for pets in the building either. And it's not just California. There are other states that are coming out with similar legislation. But here's the bottom line. If you own some rentals, then you got to pay attention to this kind of legislation. This is an example of recent things that's going on. We'll talk about that, but there's others as well. So you really got to pay attention if you see on rentals. So let's talk about some of the things that you really need to focus on if you have rentals. Hey, my name is Michael Blanc, and I help you become financially free with real estate. So Arizona and California introduced new legislation around pets. Arizona is considering on the docket a bill right now that prohibits landlords from restricting certain dog breeds like pit bulls and bulldogs in rental property, multifamily properties. Okay, that seems like a reasonable thing, okay? But again, encroaching on freedom here, and California has taken a step further, and it's a first-in-time proposal, a bill that would require landlords to allow tenants to have any kinds of pets, and they can't charge extra for it. So you got to pay attention to this kind of legislation. So it's not just if you have property in Arizona, California, because you have to pay attention to all kinds of legislation. For example, perfect example, New York City recently passed legislation that banned short-term rentals in New York City. I mean, can you imagine getting a short-term rental, paying, price for it, and then you can't rent it out short-term anymore? And so that really killed the entire business. And if you're a landlord like that, you're probably going to take a loss on the real estate. That's how problematic this is. And you have to really pay attention to these other laws. For example, pay attention to laws around community involvement and local ordinance, tenants' rights, fair housing laws, rent collections and budgeting, health and safety standards, accessibility requirements, maintenance and repairs requirements, lease agreements. If you're having Section 8 or subsidized housing, those agreements, tenant screening, and legal updates and things of that nature. So always, if you have rentals, you got to stay up to speed on these things. And it's best to work with a great real estate attorney that can help you navigate some of these things. But here's the problem, really. The challenge as a landlord is there's lots to pay attention to. And so obviously you're not even thinking about repairs right now and buying houses and things of that nature. This is legislation, and this is really, really important. Legislation really matters. But maybe you're wondering, my gosh, is it really all worth it? This is another layer that makes it very difficult as a landlord to make money with real estate. And also, it's a lot of work. And so is it really worth it? And I thought the same thing. I was a similar boat, and I had some rentals. I flipped a bunch of houses. That was my main business. We flipped 3 dozen houses, and I kept some as rentals. And it was a realization that I wasn't making enough on these rentals, and they were very active. Right? There was nothing really passive that Robert Kiyosaki talks about in his book. And I was really frustrated with where I was in my real estate investing. And maybe you're in a similar boat. And I discovered this solution a little bit by accident, and that was small apartment buildings. I had one of my wholesalers get me into a 12-unit in Washington, D.C., and I discovered over time that there are certain advantages, and 2 big ones for me was much more passive, because you don't necessarily have to deal directly with tenants anymore because a professional management company handles all the details. So that was important. And number 2, it's much more scalable. Like with houses, each one you add, with each transaction, you add 1 house to your portfolio. But with apartments, you add multiple units every single time. And not only that, but they keep getting bigger, right? So if you start with a duplex, you're not going to do a duplex again. You're going to do a quad. And if you do a quad, you're probably going to do a 10 unit. If you did 10 unit, then you're going to do a 20 unit. So these transactions get bigger. That's what I've observed with myself, but also the dozens and hundreds of people that we work with that get them started with small apartment buildings. And this is why most real estate investors, they start investing in single family housing rentals, but then they switch to apartments because they can't get there from here. So you're probably thinking, Michael, that's pretty cool. But let me tell you, apartments are pretty advanced. Let me get some more experience and money. And then in 5 to 10 years, I'll graduate to apartments. That's pretty cool, but you don't need to. And that's because we've worked with so many students over the years that we don't actually need to do any of that. The cool thing is you can get started with apartments right now, regardless of how much investing experience you have. And you don't need millions of dollars in the bank either, because you're going to raise a capital from others. So if you want to learn more about investing in apartments, then check out my free course. It's called Apartments 101. It has 4 modules that show you how you can get started with apartment buildings, how you raise money, how you can be taken seriously by brokers and investors, even if you've never done a deal before. So it's really cool. Check it out. The link is below this video. Apartments 101. I'll catch you later.